Okay, hello, and welcome to a special episode of the Faultline video podcast. Kind of bland formalities of business interviews in exchange for candid and no bullshit conversations with some of the people who I think are making real, tangible changes to the media and entertainment industry. And this time I'm joined by someone who has become known as the maestro of
I
multi-screen.
didn't know. Thank you.
It's Rob Koenen, founder and chief business officer at Tiledmedia, which is a company based in the Netherlands, making quite an outlandish claim as offering the world's most advanced video player, which I'm sure some people in our audience would contest happily, but we're here to discuss that. So welcome, Rob. Well, so I know Tiledmedia has been, super busy on the back of a couple of strong years with momentum growing around multi-view experiences. And that's not all you do, but big momentum there. But before we dive into that, we want to talk a little bit about yourself. And what impresses me about your work experience, having just stalked your LinkedIn page, is the longevity and the loyalty. So you spend 10 years at KPN Research,
Correct.
which was the R&D arm of the Dutch telco. As a scientist, you were looking into video coding and other media-related projects. And then you spent 11 years at Intertrust Technologies, which is a company we know well on the security side of media and connectivity. Intertrust CEO Talal Shamoon. He was one of our most opinionated podcast guests we've ever had.
Not surprised. Yes.
No. And after Intertrust, you spent 7 years at TNO, another research company. And that brings us to Tiledmedia, which you founded back in 2016. So that is approaching a decade now.
It is.
So, yeah, have I missed anything there? Does that sum it up quite nicely?
No, I did a brief stint at my university, but that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent most of my working life in media research, and then sort of at some old age, well, in my 50s, I decided to become an entrepreneur, which was amazing. Because we were working at TNO, we did all this research, and two of the great scientists there said, "Okay, we're doing all this research, and it always goes to waste, and then we always move on to the next project. We want this to be used in the world by real users." And this was in 2016, and if you will remember, this was when the VR hype was at an all-time high, and we saw an opportunity, helped by someone else you know well, Thierry Fortier, together with Harmonic. We showed it at IBC 2016. We showed our tiled VR streaming technology at IBC 2016. The reception was great, and we decided to start a company, which was a completely new step. I've never regretted it a single day.
Brilliant. What's been the hardest part of going from, doing the research side of things, kind of being behind the scenes in the R&D departments, to kind of being on the front line, doing things like this, being on stands at shows, conferences, that kind of thing?
The hardest part is being a real business person. And the real hardest part, I tell you, selling stuff is convincing people that our stuff is great. It's fairly easy, but then having the guts to ask what it's worth, that's been the hardest part for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of brilliant technology people who, if they had that sales kind of incentive would explode. But yes, some people don't have both. And if you do, you're very lucky. So you mentioned demos. I was treated to my first Tiledmedia Multiview demo at IBC a few years ago. You remember during the CDN Alliance after party, which many in the industry will know is notorious for not being able to hear yourself think, shall we put it that way? So not an ideal environment for a demo, to say the least. But it worked. I was impressed. But of course, sticking with a bit of background, Tiledmedia didn't start out as a multi-view expert. We should clarify that. So when Faultline first wrote about Tiledmedia back in 2017, you were pushing cloud-based encoding for 360-degree video and virtual reality content. Yes. So when did the pivot to multi-view happen? When can you pinpoint that? And I just wanted to find out if VR is still a business case for you, or are those kind of projects on the back burner with 360 video?
It's an interesting question. My opinion about this is constantly changing, but I'll tell you about that. So, obviously, we started our company at the height of the VR hype, 2016, 17. We scraped some funding together, and we did amazing projects with Sky Worlds, it was called, where we did Premier League football, which was really, it still is one of the best services in VR sports that have existed, and nobody knew about it, not even Sky subscribers in the UK with headsets that would have had access, which is an incredible shame. We worked with BT Sport on 360, Premier League, Champions League, etc. But at some point it started to dry up a little bit. And so we took this same technology, which is tiled streaming, cutting up the video in tiles and then streaming them all, to tackle a different problem that we thought would become relevant at some point in the future, which was this multi-view. And it's quite a long time ago that we started to work on this. I want to say 4 years ago already, maybe even 5 years that we started to think about it. So it's been a journey, and now multi-view is a big thing. So, but the pivot is slow, and we still serve immersive customers, I will say. Not necessarily all VR customers, but immersive customers. We do something in India with cricket. We do something in huge venues with immersive video. It's always extremely hard for us. We have these most amazing AAA customers. We can't mention their names, which is utterly frustrating. But they still do immersive stuff.
I'm glad you said that Multiview is now pretty big in your view, because fast forwarding from 2017 to 2024, which was when we last kind of spoke on the record, Multiview kind of felt like an emerging feature at the time 2 years ago, rather than something that was really mainstream. So you've kind of half answered this already, but I wanted to ask if you feel like Multiview today is mainstream and it's kind of an inevitable feature, or is there some element to it that's still a kind of demo feature, a kind of a nice to have, maybe with, you mentioned those high profile deployments?
Definitely. So I would say it's a mainstream feature now. If I see how YouTube develops its multi-view, gets customer requests for better features, for more flexibility, it's not because it's a trial thingy, it's a real thing. And you see things with the Olympics, Peacock did stuff, HBO Max did multi-view like stuff. There's a lot of announcements. It was all over NAB as well, so I think it's a mainstream feature for sure now.
Okay, so, and that segues nicely to the point about kind of what has taken this long, because it kind of first emerged around COVID. It starts to get quite popular. And I mean, if it still seems like 2 years ago we were talking, it wasn't mainstream,
right?
And now it kind of is. So what's slowing things down technically? And if your approach is better technically than other player providers, why hasn't the industry moved faster or adopted your methods faster?
I think it's moving pretty fast as it is.
Maybe I'm just fussy.
Yeah, you want to. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot has happened in the last. We had a multi-view tracker, and now it's almost impossible to track all the multi-view deployments. And there were a few a year ago, and now there's a lot. So I think it's moving. I think it's a mainstream feature now, multi-view.
Yeah, but kind of zooming in on your tiled encoding method specifically, if that is a technically better approach than others, we'll dig into the technicalities a little bit later. But why hasn't that been adopted? Because there are, as we have written about in Faultline, there are many different methods of multi-view encoding, different approaches to doing it. So why isn't yours as maybe mainstream as it should be? Because you have those customers, but others that you've mentioned aren't using.
Yeah, I will say that we have the most, and again, I can't mention the name, but I will say that we have the most advanced multi-view customer, and it's worldwide, and it's an amazing experience, and the users also say this. So there's a few different reasons for doing multi-view, I would say. And when it started, people did multi-view, but it wasn't really multi-view. You could switch cameras, and they also called that multi-view, but it was kind of taking you away from the director feed. Like if you do a race and you have onboard cameras and you switch to one onboard camera, you lose the commentary, you lose the director feed, you lose all context. So why would you use it? Now, if you can add, and this is where multi-view really shines, if you can add your own story to that of the director, especially when you do multi-ball sports, as I would call them, where the action is spread out around the course. It's for golf, it's for all racing, cycling, it could be like for a city marathon or something like this. Then I would argue our technology is the best because it keeps everything in sync. It manages all the bandwidth. I don't want to make this into a sales pitch, but it offers you the most client-side flexibility. All the other multi-view server-side methods are more for the like static multi-view where I want to keep track of like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 gaze going on at the same time, and then sync is not as important, and being able to switch fast is maybe not as important. So that's when server-side multi-view may also cut the bill. But if you want to do the advanced stuff, you want to have real user flexibility and direct interaction, being able to change the size of feeds, being able to switch instantly, and keeping the sync and keeping the audio continuous, then I would argue our solution is the best.
Okay. And that's a good point, actually, because we just kind of jumped straight into this and we didn't define what multi-view means, assuming that most people watching this know what multi-view means. Depending on your customer, it's maybe different horses for different courses, or are they all aligned on what multi-view is, completely different streams on the same screen? But some still viewing it as multi-camera rather than multi-events.
I always distinguish between multi-camera for the same event, which is useful, not so much for football or for a single ball sport, but for multi-ball sports. There is multi-game days, like if you have a Champions League in the preliminary rounds, there's like 16 matches going on at the same time, or maybe even more, and you have a few favorite teams. And then there's multi-event days, like on a Sunday morning, there's a golf tournament going on, and maybe a football match, and maybe a tennis match that you want to keep track of. In the age of betting, which seems to be here as well, people want to keep track of multiple bets, want to keep track of multiple events. So that's another reason for doing multi-view. So the last two are sort of the YouTube multi-view or the Olympics multi-view, when there's multiple events going on at the same time, and you want to keep track of the athletes from your country, for instance.
Yeah, lots of cool use cases. Fast forwarding from the thumping beats of the CDN Alliance demo that I had to the NAB, the latest NAB demo, 2026. Obviously, I wasn't there this year, so unfortunately I couldn't get that demo. However, I have seen a clip of it where you were working with AWS Elemental, who's a long-term partner, to show seamless switching between vertical and horizontal video formats.
Correct.
And it looks pretty neat. It's really intuitive, and it's very in keeping with the times today. And I'll try and show a clip of that here when I edit in post.
Yeah, I will start. Yeah, I will start.
Showing, motorsport racing. I assume that's F1. I'm not big on F1, so I'm not sure if it is or not. But I say that because F1 TV, of course, is a customer of yours for multi-view encoding. So the question is that seamless switching that you were demoing at NAB, is that already live for F1 TV app users?
One of the customers that I can't officially mention, but yes, no, it's not live for Formula One.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
So just to be clear, for the multi-view encoding is something that Elemental does. And we do I think the heavy lifting is client-side with our solution. So we provide the multi-view player with the multi-view encoded videos. And this was a demo, a proof of concept, if you will.
Okay, yeah, got it. So were there can you give us any insights to maybe some sports executives that saw that at NAB and were impressed or maybe surprised about it? Were Was there any feedback, positive or negative, that you had?
There was a
from the
lot of
show?
positive feedback. I can't name any sports executives, and I wasn't there all the time because basically we supplied the demo to AWS, and then I went elsewhere in the hall to meet people. Um, let's see what comes of it. I think it wasn't a gimmick, but it shows the flexibility that you can have now, and I think it shows a bridge between the worlds of vertical and horizontal video, or landscape and portrait, because they are surprisingly different. These two worlds are very different. And I think we will do something with vertical video before too long, including Multiview. Not necessarily this demo, but this will certainly come. There's been some interest, definitely.
Looking forward to it. And we've written about this before. Obviously, we need to speak about the positives, but one of perhaps a small negative is about how the biggest challenge for Tiledmedia is convincing customers to adopt your proprietary SDK. So I wanted to ask whether that is something that's becoming easier or maybe harder. Are media companies still quite hesitant to adopt that and relinquish that kind of control?
No, I think they're not. The hardest part for us is that people don't know us. And as I said, we work for these amazing large and super large customers, the largest in the world, and we can't advertise them on our website. We will overhaul our website, by the way, because it's due for an overhaul, but it's very hard for us to talk about them. But when we talk to people one-on-one, we can explain them that what you call a proprietary player is not really proprietary in the sense that it all plays standardized videos. I mean, it's just as proprietary as Bitmovement's player, for instance. It's no more proprietary. But what we do is we provide an entire stack. So that's sometimes the hurdle is not the fact that we have a proprietary player, which we don't, but that people have to swap out that player. That's the harder part. But there is an advantage to this, which is because we had to build this to do this very advanced VR streaming. And if you, at the beginning, you talked about, we claim that we have the best video player. I was going to get back to this. So, and we believe this is the case because it can basically do anything. It does, the same player does VR, it does incredibly large screens, it does multi-view, and the racing app that you just mentioned, it's the very same video player. But the thing is, since we had to build it from the ground up, there was no other way to do multi-tile streaming for VR. Or multi-view streaming for multi-view. So, but it's the same player across all platforms, which is where we are different than other players. And also, because we control the entire stack, we can explain to potential customers that any integration they have, and this is usually where they are afraid. They have an ad integration, they have a metrics integration, they have a DRM integration, but those are much easier for us to add than it would be for others because, again, we control this stack and it's the same across all platforms. So we do it once and immediately it's available across all platforms. And the challenge is getting to talk to people and to explain this. But when I have the opportunity to explain it, it resonates.
As you've already hinted at and commented on, your approach to multi-view is based on client-side control, right? So other server-side approaches, they handle the multi-view composition in the packager, which avoids that deep player kind of integration, and they say it can reduce CPU usage, which is one of their selling points. However, unbeknown to some, Tiledmedia does have a server-side variant up its sleeve, which is capable of stream merging, as you've told them previously,
Yes.
but this has not been commercially deployed yet.
Correct.
Due to a lack of interest. So what's behind that lack of interest on the server side? Is it because server-side approach to multi-view, I've heard, introduces latency constraints, or are there some other complexities involved?
Yeah, let me first reply that I don't see the CPU constraints on the client side multi-view.
Okay.
Because, as I said, we do VR streaming, which arguably is even harder than multi-view streaming in India, and they have a lot of old phones. I still use my Samsung from 2016, and everything works fine. So processing is not a constraint.
Mm-hmm.
I think device coverage is a thing. If you do server side, you can go to any device. If you look at the connecting devices, notably TVs, they are even that's where things get hairy, and not because of processing power, but because of the available decoders, for instance. And it's smart TV platforms are difficult. That said, literally we get a new TV in the office every day, so this is something that's ongoing development. And I'm not kidding. Literally every day, we try to get all these old TVs from eBay-like sites, and sometimes some come in broken, some come in without remotes. But now it's an ongoing development to also be available on TV. But I think eventually a full-fledged deployment of really flexible multi-view might be a combination of client side where it's possible and server side where it's necessary.
Okay. Do you do all the when you talk about get your new TV in the office every day? Do you do all the device testing in-house in the office? You don't work with the kind of testing specialist partner or anything?
Well, I think there's a difference between development and testing. So we're currently in the development phase.
Okay.
We have a customer which uses third-party testers for our stuff. But we do a lot of testing ourselves too, by the way. We have dedicated people that do testing. But if you're in the development phase, you need to have them yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. So, Rob, when you were saying about the biggest challenge, being that no one knows you and getting out there and the visibility, I just wanted to say for the record that we have been writing about Tiledmedia since 2017.
You have.
So we were ahead of the curve. So if anyone had been paying attention to Tiledmedia, they would be ahead of the curve and they would know you. So yeah, I just wanted to get that on the record that we're on the bleeding edge of technology.
Correct.
Constantly. So okay. So looking at kind of the sticking with the kind of client side versus server side kind of debate. Some companies, MediaKind, Cinemedia, Screens, maybe those guys, they would argue that the server side avoids a lot of the headaches you're introducing. So I just wanted to kind of with the client side. So just kind of wanted to zoom in a little bit more on why you think they're wrong and you're right. I'm trying to stir up a bit of a debate.
Yeah. And I'm going to disappoint you because I'm going to tell you they're not necessarily wrong.
Okay.
But if you wanted to do something like F1 does, there's no way you could do it serverless. No way on earth you could ever do an experience like this, so flexible, dynamic server side. So I think that's why it's for quasi-static layouts. And it's good for that. It's good enough, right? But if you want to do real interactivity, real personalization, real responsiveness, again, some applications need it more than others, but then the current server-side approach is very hard to make that work.
Okay. I've just had a thought, actually. The demos, the Tiledmedia demos I've seen have all been mobile-based. I don't believe I've seen a large screen TV demo.
Oh,
so
yeah, no.
I would love to see the difference.
Any Android,
so what are
take an Android TV or take an Apple TV and just, it works like a charm.
Okay. What are the kind of technical challenges in transferring that from the phone to the TV? Because they first became popular on phones before they made that jump to the TV, to the big screen. So what are the technical complexities in making that jump?
It's there is something with processing power, but they're all different platforms. That's for one.
Yeah.
Every year has a new platform as well, which any player vendor will tell you, by the way.
Maybe.
And also, there's things you can do with multiple decoders that many TVs have only one decoder. Some may have two, but it's interesting that mobile phones are just more powerful devices than TVs. But like I said, Android TVs work fine, even some of the sticks. So it has the platform that allows us to do what we need to do a good client-side experience.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my own experience of multi-view on TV is at home with Sky Sports football on via the Now app, watching multiple But it's just, I feel like it's quite simple. Just, multiple football matches on the same screen. There's no like intuitive kind of switching,
Right.
zooming, it could do with some work. This is where I find out that Sky is a client of yours and you're not allowed to talk about them.
There were, we did that. Like I said,
Okay.
this amazing Sky Worlds was, it was really good.
Of course. And we've looked a bit at the past while looking to the future. So I'll give you a kind of crystal ball opportunity to say 5 years from now, what do you see live sports viewing looking like? And I wanted to add a second question onto that, actually. I'll do two in one. Secondary to that, will we see the emergence of multi-view outside of sports eventually in 5 years or, longer? And what will that look like? What type of content is that most likely to apply to?
The last question is easier to answer than the first question.
Okay.
I think current multi-view deployments, and I'm not sure why that would change, are all about live. And besides really developing news, there is not much more to live than sports. So, and also the whole concept of multi-camera, you can do some art stuff, I think, with it, but it will remain niche. But the sports, like I said, multi-ball sports, when the action is spread out around the course, the director has to make choices that are not necessarily yours. Or you want to add your story to that of the director, this is where multi-view shines. All the other uses of multi-view today are also about live sports, being able to track multiple things at the same time. So this is where I see the sweet spot and where it will remain there. Maybe if something huge is developing and you want to keep track of multiple news outlets, for instance. But
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the only other use case that I've heard potential for is news. But as you say, that's only really for real breaking news, huge moments that you want to flip between them. But
the whole ecosystem, if you look at the streaming ecosystem, the TV ecosystem, what do people still consume live? This is all about sports. It's everything else is moving to on demand, even news. I don't watch live news anymore. Almost, it's all I do it as catch-up. If I want to, the 8 o'clock news is at 8:30. I'm not telling you a secret. I mean, this is well known. But sports is still the only holdout for live consumption.
Yeah. What about social media platforms and the verticalized short form platforms, TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels? Could there be some sort of multi-view element to those potentially?
Well, in a sense that there could be interfaces to things that happen live, sort of the demo that we showed and that you will insert into the podcast. It's where you flip between live channels vertically, and then you see something that is of interest. It's like it's almost like a new type of EPG, real-time EPG.
Yeah. Of course, these social media platforms are adding more and more live channels, live streams. So,
for sure.
Yeah, that could be a potential. So you've already mentioned, looking and exploring more vertical video in the future. What else is in the pipeline that you can tease? As someone who worked extensively in R&D, whenever I speak to someone who works in R&D, I have to ask, come on, tease me, give me something. What's in the pipeline? What are you working on?
I don't think we're done yet with immersive. And this is a fairly recent insight, but I don't think we're done yet with immersive. So we have it's surprisingly persistent.
Okay, that sounds good. So more VR 360-degree video?
Maybe not 360, because I think people have found out that for live sports viewing, there we are again. 180 is good enough, or something maybe a little bit wider, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sticking with sports, there have been a few cool kind of case studies and proof of concepts with headsets at stadiums recently that I've seen.
Yeah,
so,
and I've seen so many of them, and it requires people really knowing what they do. We did some amazing stuff with the games in Beijing, and we did ice hockey. And I always believed that ice hockey would not be possible with VR because the puck would be too small. You wouldn't be able to follow it in a headset. But then there was this company called Koenen, they did the production, and they put cameras, 180 cameras, right behind the goal and in other places behind the glass. This was amazing. I mean, it's so close, and it's such an experience. And I've never been able, and I don't know how hockey works very well, and I always lose the puck. But in this way, with the director and switch between those cameras, I was able to follow everything, and it's very intense. And sometimes these athletes just come bumping right into you because that's how close the camera is to the plexiglass. That's a really immersive experience. And also short track skating. I've never been to a real short track event myself, but I've never experienced or understood the sheer speed of these skaters until they put a VR camera on the ice and you could see them whiz by. That was amazing.
Okay, that sounds new and not for the faint-hearted, shall we say?
People always afraid that you get sick with VR, but if you put the camera still, no, it's just camera motion is what makes it go bad.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. I think that's all we've got time for, Rob.
That was interesting.
Anything you desperately like to add before we close out?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, you have been following us since 2017, 16. I do distinctly remember the thingy with media content you wrote about, which was at the time we had to put something straight. But no, you did.
That did get a bit of attention at the time. Yes.
No, it's good. It's good. We're in a good place, and hopefully we can get our name out a little bit more.
Brilliant. I hope so too. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. If you've got any Multiview questions, then reach out to the Tiledmedia team, or if you've got any problems, any beef with anything Rob said today, then just send him some abuse on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. And if you've got any follow-ups for me that are relevant to Multiview or neighboring case studies, please get in touch. Anything, the same goes if you've got any, gossip or something you'd like to talk to me about. My inbox is always open. So thanks for joining, Rob. I believe the next time I'll see you will be at IBC 2026, unless there's any shows between now and then.
That will be the latest, definitely.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.